All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the second part of our two-part manager training series. Today, we are talking about creating a thriving workplace. And if you're here with us last week, you heard us talking about all the things and all the types of trainings that managers need to create an engaged workplace and reduce retention at your health center. And so today, like I said, we're going to be moving and talking about creating a thriving workplace, with managers, with high-functioning managers at the center of that. I'm Suzanne Spear. I'm the Director of Workforce Development here at ACU, and I will be your host for just the first little bit of this, and I'll be turning it over in just a minute to our guest presenter. For those of you who weren't here last week or are new to ACU, we are a national nonprofit organization focused on the recruitment and retention of a clinical workforce in order to serve the access to care issue. We were started over 20 years ago as a National Health Service Corps alumni organization, and that remains true to our core, no pun intended today. It is our chief advocacy focus, and we really do a lot of different things. We have several different programs. We develop resources and trainings for clinicians and other folks that are serving in underserved areas, and provide networking opportunities at our annual conference, which is going to be online this year, but stay tuned for some more information on that. Our largest program is our STAR Center. Sorry, slides are going a little haywire today. Our STAR Center, which stands for Solutions, Training, and Resources for Recruitment and Retention. This program is funded by the Bureau of Health Workforce. Bureau of Health Workforce. I'm just all over the place today. Sorry, you guys. The Bureau of Primary Health Care, and through HRSA, and we are funded as an NTAP. And so what that means is a National Training and Technical Assistance Partner. So we are funded to develop free tools and resources around the recruitment and retention of a clinical workforce. If you haven't been to our website, I would encourage you to do so, and that is chcworkforce.org. You can check out all of the free tools and resources there after this session. So just some webinar housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, and it will be sent out to you after this session. We want you to ask questions as you go along. You can either put them in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we encourage you to do that throughout the session. We will have a Q&A session at the very end, but want you to feel like that you can ask things as you go along. And we would also encourage you to fill out our session evaluation at the very end. We'll try to put it up before the very, very end of the session, so you'll have a few minutes to fill that out before you sign off. And finally, we want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy your time with us today. If you do have those questions and you want to put it in chat, feel free to select all panelists and attendees, and that way it will go to everyone in the that is attending our session today. Again, you can use that Q&A box, but the chat box will send it to everybody if you select that all panelists and attendees, so you can put it there, and that way everyone can see what you are saying and questions that you're having. I mentioned today that was only going to be your host for just a little bit, and as tongue-tied as I am today, I think that is a good thing. We are really pleased and thrilled to have back with us today April Lewis, the CEO of Good Connections Incorporated. The mic over to her and let her introduce herself to you guys. So welcome, April, and glad you're back with us.
Thank you, Suzanne. So happy to be back here. I will get the screen. I think I can go for it now. Okay, perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Suzanne, I must tell you, when you were giving the housekeeping and the last part about have fun, when you said sit back and relax, I immediately thought about how much I miss flying. I just embodied, thinking about being on a flight and they're telling us to sit back and enjoy the flight. So to those of you that may be like me, missing the sunny skies and flying, I feel your pain. As Suzanne said, my name is April Lewis. I am absolutely thrilled and honored to be back with you today, or be with you if you weren't with us last week, Tuesday, as we talk about a few things that you as managers need to lead your team better in the healthcare setting. I understand there's a diverse group of people on this line. Some of you may have one staff person, some of you may have 50 plus staff people. What we want to do is just give you a few nuggets to help you keep them engaged, increase their engagement, so you ultimately can keep your turnover down. And the last thing that we'll talk about is how to recognize and reduce burnout. And that's critical because we want everyone to have a good experience at work. We want people to have joy at work. We want them to come to work and show up and do great work. But even with all of that, we want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and that we are doing what we can as managers, as people leaders, to ensure that they aren't burnt out. So we'll end today's conversation talking about burnout, which in the healthcare setting, we're very, very familiar with it. So before we get into the content, I want to wake you up and shake you a little bit before you sit back, relax, and have fun during this session. I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Using one word, you describe the culture of your organization. And that word can be anything. When you think about your organization, not just your department or your team, what's the word that you would use to describe the culture? And if you were on last week, you know that culture is one of those things. It does not necessarily need your help in any way to be there. It absolutely is being developed with or without you. So using one word only. Oh, passionate. I love it. Love it. Love it. Service. We need that more than anything in healthcare. Diverse. Oh, that's a really, really good word. Caring, inclusive, caring again. Family. Oh, that is a really good word for a team. Caring and team. So those are good words to describe your existing culture. And the reason I wanted you to think about what's the culture that you have for your organization, there is a direct connection between how engaged your employees are, how satisfied they are with the work that they do, which develops and creates the culture of your organization. And words like caring and family mean that you're already setting the tone that is very, very much needed and respected and wanted by your team. Self-centered at the top, patient-centered at the bottom. So there's a divide right there. Very true and honest. Open, that's a good one. Evolving, yes, yes, yes. I love evolving because the way we do business today is not the way we did business back in the day. 3 years ago, the way we do healthcare, community health centers have changed. The state of health in America has changed, right? So we constantly want to be evolving to meet the needs of our communities and also to meet the needs of our teams, and also collaborative. That's needed more than anything because no one person or no one department can do it all. So thank you for that. We all have heard about the why. Start with why. If you have not had the chance to listen to the TED Talk by Simon Sinek on Start With Why, I highly encourage you to listen to it. TED Talks range between 15 and 18 minutes, so it won't take long at all, but it will absolutely change the way you look at your workplace, you look at projects, and you look at yourself essentially. So before we get into today's discussion, I want you to think about your why. What is the reason that you, with all the different organizations and companies that you can work with, chose your respective organization? Why do you do what you do each and every day with so many options available to you? And everyone on this line, I know without even knowing who you are, you're absolutely a rock star and you are insanely smart. So you have options. But why this organization? Why this community? Why these patients? I share that with you to tell a little bit about myself myself and why I'm here. You know, it is always an honor to speak to leaders and managers and people in general, because what I enjoy doing most is helping people be their highest selves. I am a firm believer that everyone wants to be great. Now, the word great is very, very subjective in nature. Great to me is different from you. When I think about the word great, I think about being my highest self. And I think about how can I be my highest self to help other people be their highest selves. I was in the military for 6 years. And in the military, there isn't a focus on too much of being your best self versus getting the mission done and operating with the spirit of camaraderie. And then once I got out, I got into healthcare, and I saw it was a totally different experience. Like someone put to describe their culture, it was a spirit of service. It wasn't just about us, it was about the patients that we served. And once I really started working with community health centers, and I worked at a community health center in South Carolina, I was amazed to see that you take a back seat to the mission in its entirety. The beautiful thing about your why is when it connects with the work that you do very authentically. So it'll fuel you, it'll drive you on days where you may be exhausted, where you may be dealing with burnout, or the bureaucratic things of the work that you do just start weighing you down. Your why is your anchor to push you through. And why is more important than how you're going to get it done. How are you going to lead such a diverse team? How are you going to get 7 to 9 people to enjoy coming to work is secondary to why you want to do it. If your why is that you really want to help people be great, you really want to lead this organization to be the best employer, the best provider in the community, you really want this organization to be the employer of choice, your why will help you in figuring all of the hows and the what out. So what do your team members want? I want to go through a few things that a lot of trusted resources have decided to say, what do your people want? You know, oftentimes our staff employees don't come out and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Manager or manager, I want this, I need this. But through surveys, focus groups, and open-ended conversations, here are a few things that team members want. First, they want full appreciation for the work that they do. We all understand how strong and impactful it can be to hear job well done, keep up the good work, or just something is saying, I saw what you did and thank you. People want to be appreciated. They want to know that the work that they're doing is valuable and that you respect the time that they spent in doing it. So full appreciation for what they're doing is absolutely critical. It's going to increase your engagement, and it's also going to foster those cultures like you spoke to, passionate and service. Let them know that you see them, they're doing well, and give good correction when needed, but appreciate your team for the work that they're doing. Filling in on things. Last week we talked a little bit about transparency. Your team members want to know that they're connected to the bigger picture. They want to see themselves in the mission and not feel like by the time an email comes out, it works completely around them. Now, I say that understanding that there is some information that can't be released too early. So when you're able to be transparent, and as soon as you can be transparent, share that with your team members. Even if you're allowed, if there's a topic on the table being discussed at the senior leadership level, bring your team members in so you can say, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to figure it out. And as soon as I'm able, I'll give you the final verdict, the final answer, or whatever the case may be. Teamwork is definitely about that connection. I'm here, you're here, and we're in this together. So when you think about the people that you manage, it's the same way. How can you ensure that they feel that they are in it together with you and senior leadership? Sympathetic help on personal problems. I was speaking to a health insurance company in South Carolina about 3 weeks ago. They're the second largest Medicaid company in the state. And I have this coping with COVID personally and professionally webinar that I was doing. And this one was specific to all the staff. It's done for all staff and for leaders. And on the all staff webinar, one of the managers, it was actually the HR manager, she asked a very, very provocative question. She asked me, how do you have the sympathy around personal problems and yet draw the line when you want to just make sure it's work and not to get personal or not to offend anyone? And my answer, based again off everything that I study and read and personal experience, is to always remember that your team member is a human first. They are a person, and then they're whatever their title is. So you being a human as well, you know how you want to be made to feel. You know that you have personal issues that you deal with, and you still have to suit up and show up to work. So it may not be going deep into the detail, understanding and knowing all of their business, but rather recognizing it and letting them know that you hear them and you see them, and that you can do what you can to ease some of the problem if it's possible. So I think that line will naturally draw itself when we remember that we're leading people. We aren't managing widgets. We manage tasks and we lead people. So that is what my response to her was. If anybody else has anything else to share or a different experience as it relates to that fine line, we love to hear it in the chat. Job security. We want to know, and your team members want to know, is this safe? Am I going to be here? COVID-19 showed us how secure a lot of jobs are in America. So when you think about job security for your team, we understand how the health center is structured. You know how it's been structured. But then you also look at your strategic plan and you see what's coming down the pipeline. So your team members, if you are transparent with the strategic plan, they may look at it and see, oh, we're trying to lean out the organization. What does this mean for me? So this is what they want. They want to know that if I continue to show up to work and do what I'm being asked to do, that I'll have job security. So where you're able, if there is a topic of leaning out, outsourcing and things of that nature, if there is job security, remind them that they're going to be okay. And it doesn't have to be specifically saying you're not losing your job, because we don't want to do that. Rather, casting a vision for them to see what's coming down the road and see themselves in the work. They also want good wages. Now, I'll get into this a little later, but I will say from the very onset of this conversation, I understand that this isn't always a topic that the manager has a lot of input in, because we have budgets. We can only pay so much for each salaries until we increase the revenue. But people want to get paid for the work that they're doing. People want to make sure, if I look to my colleague at Community Health Center X right around the corner, wherever the case may be in a different service area, that my salary is comparable to them. They don't even know the specifics of how the salary is determined or the wages are determined, but people talk. We know that in health centers, we know that in all organizations, our team members talk. So your team members absolutely want to get good wages for the work that they're doing. And they want to do interesting work. Now, this in and of itself is interesting. People want to come to work. They don't want to feel like they're doing mundane tasks every day. But then there are just some things that have to be done the way they have to be done. I'm sure everyone on this line looks at their job, and you may love what you do, but there is one part of your job, one function that absolutely drives you crazy. There is one piece that you dread doing it, so you push it off to the absolute last minute. I remember when I got out the military, my first job having to convert 6 years of being an automated logistical specialist into civilian language, I ended up landing a job. The first thing that would hire me, I was the receptionist. And I was sitting there and I was told that I would have to take minutes. So when there were team meetings, and it was really more so notes, but essentially taking minutes. And it used to drive me crazy, because in my mind, I'm thinking, if everybody's at the meeting and everybody was present and we were talking, why do I need to write down what was being said just a second ago? Not realizing that there needed to be documentation, because we know one message can be said and it's heard a multitude of ways. So again, we all have something about our job that we do not like and enjoy doing, but it has to be done. So when you look at your team members, and as a leader, you know there may be some daunting task that needs to get done to fulfill the mission. Have a creative conversation. A creative conversation is saying, this is what we do. Is there another way, in your opinion, that we can do it? Is there a way that you would like to do it to where we still get the outcome that we want, but it may be more interesting to you? It goes to one of the recommendations that we had last week, and it's also in the manager toolkit that's forthcoming about coaching strategies, asking a certain set of questions to open up the conversation and allow your team members to think from a different vantage. So we want to do interesting work, regardless of what the task. We want it to be interesting where it's able and exciting. So have those creative conversations. Promotion and growth opportunities. Your team members want to know there is somewhere else that I can go. There is an opportunity for advancement. If we sit in organizations and we never promote anyone, no one goes from level 1, 2, or 3, then that will cause your team members to get disengaged, because the story that they may begin telling themselves in their mind is, what's the point? If I keep doing the same thing, I show up early, I leave late, I make sure all the check-ins are done, I'm putting everything in the EHR the way it should be done, and I'm not going to get anywhere, what's the point? That can lead to disengagement. So your team members absolutely want to know that there is promotion and there is growth opportunities. And growth is different from promotion, whereas, and we'll get into it, it's learning and development. Can you help them grow as a professional? Help them grow as a healthcare professional specifically? Personal loyalties to workers. Loyalty is so important in the workspace, especially in community health centers. With us being multidisciplinary organizations and we have different teams and different roles in the health centers to treat the patients, we want to know that we're all in this together. We want to know that point A and point B are connected to get to point C. In project management, there is a process where it's the input and the output of a task. And there's a specific function where for one output to happen, the input absolutely has to happen. So you can't start this until this finishes. I've done trainings and I use that as an example to open up conversations to better understand what each team member is doing. Because oftentimes when there is a pod or a group of team members that don't understand what's happening before or after them, they don't see why there's a disconnect. But if you open up those conversations and say to the front desk person, you do this because it fuels whatever the next step is, now everyone understands the process. Everyone understands the workflow, and it will drive your loyalty, because this person at point C will be more motivated to get done what they need to do because of what happens at point D. So loyalty it's not just about, I like this person or I like their personality or we have a lot in common because we're from the same area. No, it's, are we loyal to the work getting done? Can I trust that you will show up in a way that I can do what I need to do, and vice versa? Team members absolutely want that. And they want good working conditions. So you think about your facilities, understanding that budgets are what budgets are. Some buildings are what some buildings are. I remember going in health centers and they were in the portables that we have, and then they were actually able to build up to a new high-end facility. But your team members want a good work condition. And sometimes you have to be creative. Everybody isn't going to get an office. Everyone doesn't need an office. But is there a way that we can create a space for them to feel at home while they're at work? How can we give them the lead way to personalize their workstation? Is there a desk, whereas we can take one desk area and make it two, so at least one of our admin staff or one of our clinical staff have a place to sit down just to exhale? Working conditions are critical. I was having a conversation with the HR manager the other day, and we were talking about everyone working from home. And for me, I'm used to it. Now, all my businesses work from home. Unless I'm out speaking or coaching or consulting, then I'm at home. So I'm perfectly comfortable and productive being at home. She was the exact opposite. Home for her was more stressful than being at work because she has a special needs child. And her special needs child is no longer in school. And so she's been there every day. So for her, she's ready to go back in the workplace. And look at that with your staff. The working conditions dictate your productivity, your performance, and your engagement. Again, we can't satisfy everybody. Everyone cannot have a corner office, but can we make people feel appreciated just because of the condition of the workspace? Can we be creative in how we set up our facilities so everyone has a place to be seated, an area where they can eat in a nice, clean environment? It may seem small, but it's something that team members want, and it affects how they feel. Tactful discipline. I am a firm believer, again, that everyone wants to be great. So in order to be great, there are several levels that you have to go to where you're going to be not so great. So you need to hear from your leaders and you need to hear from your managers on what needs to do improvement. When you do performance management, we talk about satisfactory, above satisfactory, needs improvement. But there is a way to say everything. We know how it is. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So if you're disciplining your team members, are you disciplining them with encouraging words, or are you focusing just on the problem? Are we speaking to the problem and providing solutions? Are we asking questions to better understand the situation? Are we practicing emotional intelligence before we have those conversations? That's what tactful discipline is, and that's what your team members want. They want to feel respected in conversation, even doing performance management. So these list the things that your team members want. And as you look at this, and when you get the recording and the slides later, what can you do to ensure that your team has access to these things? One of my favorite quotes by Arthur Ashe: start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And I say that because you can look at that list and you can be thinking, April, that sounds good, but I can't. I don't have the leeway. Upper level management want to prove it. My team does it. And you can come up with all the roadblocks and all the reasons why it doesn't work. And I get it. And I know all of them are valid. But what can we do with what we have right now in our respective workplaces? As managers of people, this is essentially your golden rule. They understand that you can't do everything because you're going to have open conversations saying that you're trying, or you've asked, or the leadership made their decision based off whatever. But how can you use what you have, the leeway and the flexibility that you have to do what you can? Your team members will definitely appreciate it. So when it comes to engagement, there are several definitions of it. What you see on your screen is a SHRM's definition, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, for what employee engagement is. Now, SHRM's, Gallup, HR Toolkit, there are so many People's Choice, there are so many definitions of employee engagement. What SHRM did, in my opinion, is that they took the best of the best and made their one. And basically it says that engagement is the life cycle employees experience physically, emotionally, psychologically, and behaviorally within their organization. So what does that mean? It's everything. It's not just, I make a good salary, so I'm engaged, I'm here, I love it, I'm happy. It's not just, I have a corner office. It's not just, I can leave work at 3:00 because of family issues. It is the totality of the employee's experience as a person, how they show up, how they present themselves, and how they feel about the workplace. So another question for you. Think about your team. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most engaged, how engaged is your team right now? And if you have multiple members, use the average of them all. How engaged is your team? I'll give you a few minutes to pop that in the chat. A 4, that's really good. A 2, 3, so halfway, average 2. Want to raise that up. Hopefully after this webinar, we're able to increase that. 3, 4, 3. So most people feel that their team is average engaged, and 1 to 5, perfect. 3.75, a 3. 3 and 4 seem to be leading it. Perfect, a 4. So as we continue to go on, think about keep that number in your mind, write it down somewhere, and see of the things that we talk about and the additional things that you'll learn and read, what can you do, again, in your sphere of influence and control to raise the engagement of your team? Love to see the 4s and the 3. What's interesting that you all see is that no one put a 5. I love that, because for me, there is always opportunities for growth. There is always opportunities to do better and be better. I love it. So we're averaging about a 3 to 4, 3.89. That is very specific. Did that number come off a survey? I love it. So a midway point on the level of engagement for our team. So when we're going to get into engagement, but I want to highlight the difference between engagement and satisfaction, because oftentimes they're used interchangeably, but there are some differences. Even in how we name surveys, we may say employee engagement survey versus employee satisfaction survey. So I want to go through key factors that impact both of them. The first one with engagement is the leadership. Engagement is directly impacted by having an inspiring or a not inspiring leader, the leadership interacting with the workforce, That is I would say one of the chief complaints when organizations ask me to come in is that there is a gap between senior leadership and the workforce. There is no communication, and they want to close that gap so your team members don't feel like they're less than, or they're just there just to work, and the leaders not feel like, oh, I'm here to just push out tasks and get it done. So engagement is directly impacted by that interaction. Collaborative is pretty much the same thing. How can we collaborate? How is the leadership involved and hearing from us and working together on different projects and initiatives? Is everybody afforded the opportunity to have a seat at a different table when it's an option? And employees want to feel like they are involved in the company's success and growth. Again, going back to feeling like they're in, they want to know that they are in part of the team. They're connected to the team, that I'm not just here working and nobody thinks about me or nobody cares how I feel. It's that leadership is showing them that I see you, I appreciate you. As we move in this direction, we need you and you're coming with us for X, Y, Z. Now, I said this last week and I'll just reiterate it again today. As people managers, you are leading the most complex being. You're dealing with human beings. Human beings come to work, and yes, you have their titles, you have their roles, and you have their responsibilities. And you have so many other things that you don't see while they're in the workplace. There's their family, their health, their financial situation, things that they're dealing with spiritually, things happening in their community. And then you as a leader have to keep them engaged, and you want to keep them engaged. So as you look at these things, think about, again, what is it that you can do, understanding that you can't do it all. Sometimes a 3 is a win when you used to be at a 2, but you had a conversation with leadership and say, my people want to hear from you. Can you come down to the site, once a week or once a month, whatever the case may be? I remember visiting a health center, and they did rounds at each site. The leadership team, they went to every site every week, and they got a report as to what was happening. And we know health centers have some of the most amazing patient stories of how we've been of service to someone, how we help somebody get access to care that they otherwise wouldn't have. So as leaders, get involved in those conversations, connect with the people, and encourage your senior leadership to do the same. They want advancement opportunities, as we mentioned, learning and development. That is inclusive of their technical skills as well as those soft skills like we mentioned last week. If you have a call center staff, think about creative ways you can help them learn and grow. Communication, conflict resolution. Even for you, you're dealing with a diverse group of people. So what trainings do you need to help you lead the team better? Professional growth is critical. As a manager, you want your people to get better. You want your people to be the best versions of themselves. You want them to excel in their work. So what is it that you can do? Not looking just at their technical job, not just what they do, but the whole picture of the person, of the professional. What creative trainings can you send them to help them excel? And internal and team promotion is a great way to do it. I often use the example of the front desk. In the front desk, you may only have so much budget to provide for the salaries, but the front desk is important. It's critical, just as important as every other role, the call center, things of that nature, but they are the gatekeepers to your patients. They are the smiling faces that your patients see when they present. So if you aren't able to necessarily promote up within that department, can you create a lead? Can you do level 1, 2, and 3? So even in the absence of a financial promotion, until that opportunity comes, how can you promote them internally and promote the team? I even experienced working with the organization that they did temporary promotions, whereas someone would be the lead for 6 months and then another person would do it for 6 months. So each person got an opportunity to see how it felt in that leadership role. And what they saw was more creative and innovative ideas came out from each individual. So think about creative ways you can boost that engagement with your team within the confines and the restrictions of what you have. And communication, consistent communication. How often do you talk to your team? How are you talking to your team? I know it's a split right now between who's working remotely and who may be at home. I'm sure most staff and the health centers, you're essential, are working inside the health centers, but are you consistently communicating with them? And again, going back to what we said about communication last week, communication is the loop. You, as the sender of a message, send out information, and you want the receiver to hear it in the way that you're sending it and act on it based off what you want them to do or get. So they want consistent communication. They want to resolve problems quickly. We all know how it feels where there's an issue. Think about when you send a complaint to customer service. I'm in it right now with Canva, the graphic design software, and I am eligible to get a pro account because I have a nonprofit. So I emailed the application. I went through all of this stuff, sent supporting documents to get my Canva pro account, and I have not heard back. I've sent 3 additional emails. And then I got an email the other day that said, we just want to know if you're still interested in this situation. We haven't heard from you. So I'm like, wait a minute, I've emailed you 3 times. So you think about your team. Now, for me, I would love to quit Canva because of this experience, but they're the best thing on the market. Think about your team. We don't want them leaving because an issue arises and they don't feel like there is a solution in a timely manner. Even if that solution is to say, we're working on it, I'm working through it, I'm hearing from other parties involved, whatever the case may be, they want to know that problems get resolved quickly. And that communication does affect how they're engaged. And they want trustworthy communication. Can they believe what you're saying? Are you coming from a place of honesty and integrity? You know, as managers, you know that they listen to every word that you say, and they want to know that you're speaking the truth and that it's consistent across the board. What you tell one team member is what you tell another team member as it relates to work and things of that nature. And then bi-directional communication. It's them talking to you and you talking to them as well. So it's not always just you facilitating meetings and talking about, you know, what's on the docket, what needs to happen in the health center. Are you creating a space to where they can come to you? Do you have a truly open door policy where they can come and talk about their concerns or issues or just say what's going well? So communication directly affects engagement. DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that's a very hot topic. I think organizations are focusing on now more than ever, and it's much needed, especially when your staff and your community and your constituents are diverse. So when it comes to DEI, that means that your team wants to know that you're open to new ideas. We don't want to have a meeting where the same person's idea is accepted and everyone else is like, oh, we'll get back to it. So be open to new ideas from different members of your team. And also give equal opportunities and treatment. Again, I've been a staff person before, you've been a staff person before. Staff members pay attention to everything. We see who are the so-called favorites. We see who are the so-called outcasts. So you want to ensure that you are treating your team members equally. Now, you have a diverse team, so you won't treat everyone the same because maybe the way John prefers to be communicated with from what you've learned is different from Sally, but you want that equitable treatment across the board. If one staff person is able to have, you know, flexibility in their schedule, they're going to talk about it and they're going to see it. So do what you can to ensure all staff people have it. So that equal opportunities and treatment, especially as it relates to the professional growth and development. Look at that as an opportunity to create a plan for your team. So if we're not just sending one group, one subset of team members off to growth and development trainings and things of that nature, how can you create a plan for everyone to have access to professional growth opportunities? And all of these mean across gender, across race, and across generations. And generations is very important because this is one, and when you study the different generations, it really opens up your eyes to how you engage with your team members. Think about our baby boomers and think about the silent generation. We don't necessarily look at them as the techies as we do millennials, Gen Ys, and things of that nature. But be inclusive as you talk about technological advances, as you talk about, you know, new and upcoming ideas and things that you're rolling out. Don't disengage with the team member because of their generation. Don't disengage with the team member because of the topic that a racial situation arises at the health center. Don't not have a conversation with everyone. We want everyone to be included. We want everyone to be treated equal. So as a manager, ensure that across the board, your team members can see and feel that there is a spirit of inclusivity inside your organization, inside your respective team. And compensation, again, I understand that this is very much a senior leadership and HR function, but we want to ensure as best that we can, compensation is comparable to the market and the competitors. When you measure for job satisfaction, employee satisfaction, this is what they really, really want to focus on. Like, I am getting paid accordingly. We know the website, salary.com. That is an easy way to look and put your job title in and see if you are getting paid to what the market is getting paid. And again, the factors don't have anything to do with the staff person trying to see, am I getting paid the most here, or is there opportunity for me to go somewhere else? I'll never forget when I learned that a staff member left a health center to work at a hospital because of a 4-cent increase. It had nothing to do with the job. It had nothing to do with the money. They weren't satisfied because they saw that 4 cent and they were looking just for an increase. And they were like, if I can go up 4 cents, then there's probably an opportunity that I can go up even more. So although that may seem unrealistic, depending on how satisfied with how your employee is with the job, 4 cents may make a difference. And our benefits and rewards package support overall well-being. You know, we're in healthcare, so we know the importance of being able to go to the doctor. And we work with community health centers, so we really know the importance of being able to afford going to the doctor. So when you think about employee satisfaction and you have those conversations with HR as they negotiate the benefits plan and packages, employees want to know that their well-being is being taken care of outside of work. What other perks can we include outside of salary? You know, for me, I lost my glasses a few months ago and I haven't bought a new pair, but that was always something that was important, vision insurance, because glasses are not cheap. So when you look at pure satisfaction, you look at the money, you look at the benefits and rewards, do we have competitive packages? Are we taking care of our people outside of the work that they're doing when they're in the building? And work-life balance. We as healthcare professionals understand this. We know the importance of work-life balance, and we also know how challenging it can be based on the needs of our community, based on the demands and the size of our organizations. So how, as a manager, can you foster work-life balance? Think about flex schedules and comp time. Again, I know the clinical setting is different. There is not an opportunity to work remotely when you have to touch a patient. But how can we be creative? Again, I think creativity will serve us so much better if we just open up the conversation to see how can we do it a different way to still get the same outcome. So consider your work week. When are you slow? Look at your no-show rate. Is there a day, maybe a Friday afternoon, where you can alternate staff leaving an hour early? I'm throwing out ideas. I know all of this has to go through the necessary approval channel, but think about how you can foster a spirit of work-life balance within your team as you're able to help them feel more satisfied at work. And remote work, if that's an option for the ops team, and vacation. Encourage your team members to take vacation. If they have it, of course, some people never want to leave. They're there every day, but remind them, gently remind them, if you feel comfortable doing so, that they do have vacation to disconnect. Because you'll see, once we get into burnout, all of this plays a part in it. It's very important that you encourage and support work-life balance and promoting joy at work. Again, it ties into doing interesting work. We want people to want to come into our workplaces. We don't want them to dread the alarm clock when they wake up in the morning. They want to come in. We're celebrating each other. We're recognizing each other, and we have joy in the workplace, even in the midst of a busy day. And recognition is so important. It directly impacts your staff satisfaction, your employee satisfaction. So showing appreciation. Again, they want it. Do you recognize them? Do you say thank you? It can be something cheesy. I like cheesy stuff. I remember when I was working a job and I did my first webinar, and one of the managers left a "you did it" like kindergarten sign on my door, and I still have it to this day. Now, I'm different in that regard because I love artsy crafty things, but know your team. And a great way to know them is the book that I have listed here, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's a spinoff of the 5 love languages. But what you'll learn is, what are the 5 ways employees like to be appreciated? How do they like to be shown appreciation? This is a great book, and when you buy it, it comes with the supporting online material and series so you can actually take them through the assessment for them to tell you, and you'll know objectively how they like to be recognized and appreciated. You don't want to call out a staff person in front of the organization and say they did a great job if they actually just prefer words of affirmation. If they just want to hear you say job well done or get an email, having them called out may cause them to be embarrassed and may even shut down a little bit. So I highly recommend this book as a read, and then doing the test to see how your team members like to be shown appreciation. And then it affects engagement directly. Are you recognizing the work that your team members do, even on the smallest scale, leaving a post-it note, sending an email, recognize them during the staff meeting, whatever the case may be. And always think about how you like to be shown appreciated. Do you do the work that you do and lead your team and constantly move the needle and not ever hear job well done? So think about that as you engage and work with your team. And this chart right here, once you get these slides, I highly encourage you to really print this off or write it down. We are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what this does is put it in employee engagement terms. So we all want to get to a point of self-actualization at that top peak. You know, it's where peak performer comes from, when you're at that highest self. So we start at the bottom though. Our physiological needs have to be met, right? Going back to that workplace, the commute, you know, people want to know, do I have to spend 45 minutes on the highway to get to this job? Or can I take one that's just okay because it's 15 minutes away from my home? So when you think about your team, now their commute, you don't have any control over, but no, these are the needs and wants of your team. And then from there, we go up to safety. We want to feel safe in our workplace. We want to be safe in our job security, the rewards and benefits, things of that nature. Think about people you may know that are still working jobs that they aren't as engaged in. They don't necessarily enjoy them, but they're secure and they have the benefits and rewards that align with their lifestyle. Belonging, diversity and inclusion, support from team members. We want to feel like part of a team. When I used to do trainings with health centers, I always tried to bridge the gap between the admin and the clinical, because there are two different priorities, but they absolutely need each other to be successful. We need to communicate, not just in the EHR, but in person. We need to be on one accord as we treat the patient, as we run the operation. So your team members want that sense of belonging and their esteem, again, recognizing them. And it'll be exciting if you haven't already done this to learn how they like to be shown recognition. Again, I am that person. I like words of affirmation. It can be on a Post-it note. It can be on a card. It can be in an email, whatever the case may be. So knowing your team, you'll be able, as their manager, to recognize them in a way that really lets them know that not only do you care because you understood how they like to be recognized, but you're seeing the work that they do day in and day out. And then ultimately, they'll get to that point of self-actualization where they are one person. Who they are at work is essentially who they are. They're somebody that operates in a spirit of service. They want to support their team members. They want to be loyal. They want to have open communication with you. They want to feel inclusive, and they include others in the work that they're doing. Even something as simple as going out to lunch. A self-actualized person will not leave anyone behind as best as they can. So when you think about engagement and look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how can we bring our team members up to their highest self, to be peak performers? And so we know what to do. How do we measure it? Poll surveys. Just what it is. Get a sense of how engaged they are now. You know, you gave your ratings. Again, look at that number. And then maybe if you haven't done it, or your organization haven't done an engagement survey, employee engagement survey, you can conduct one and look back to what you were thinking. Or if you have the lead weight, I know each organization is different. If you're able to measure your team alone, do so you can get a sense of where they are. How engaged are they now? And one-on-ones, that open communication, having a meeting. It may not just need to be about a specific project or a task, but just talk, see how they're feeling. Again, reference the coaching strategies that's in the manager training toolkit that's forthcoming. It'll give you a great framework on how to engage in those conversations by asking the necessary questions to learn more about your team in a way that they probably wouldn't offer up information before. And stay and exit interviews are so important. Stay interviews, in the HR space, I thoroughly enjoy training on stay interviews, because it is really where you get a snapshot of what's going on right now. And a stay interview is essentially learning what's making a team member stay or desiring to leave. So you'll ask questions where are they feeling satisfied? Do they feel appreciated? Are they getting what they need? A stay interview is a great way to understand engagement. And exit interviews. When one of your team members leaves, if they're open to it, have that conversation with them. If it's not a formal way that your HR department does, and you have the lead way to have an exit interview, understand why they are leaving. If it's a better opportunity, if it's because of the pay, they may not give you the full story. We won't know, but I think it's a great way to open up the door, and you can use that information to impact your team that's still there with you. And a net promoter score is essentially, this is a fancy way of saying, would your team member tell another team member to join the team? After you do an event and you send out a survey, the net promoter score is just promoter. How likely are you to tell someone else about this training? How likely are you to invite somebody to come to this event? So how likely are your team members to tell another person in the organization, oh, you should come join our team? So that's your net promoter score that you want to pay attention to. And establishing key metrics, right? What is it that you want to measure? Are you looking at, the days that they're in the office? Are you looking at a certain productivity measurement? Are you looking at, if you have outreach and enrollment? Are you looking at a certain engagement in the community, things of that nature? So that's what you want to determine, so you can see, are we making it or not? Are we hitting the mark or are we exceeding the mark? That's a good way to see how engaged your team is. And lastly, listen. Again, it's going to bring in the one-on-ones to stay in exit interviews. You're just going to listen to your team. Listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying. Pay attention to their body language. Pay attention to how they come in the door and how they leave out the door. Those are some ways that you can truly measure engagement. So just a few ways on how you can tell if your team member is engaged. They're optimistic, team-oriented. They go above and beyond, solutions-oriented, selfless, shows passion for learning. They pass along credit and accept blame. Your disengaged team member, they're pessimistic, self-centered, high absenteeism, negative attitude, egocentric, focuses on monetary worth, accept credit, but passes along the blame. So this chart, again, paying attention to what they may not be saying, this is how they look. So your high engagement can lead to high retention. Now these, and they go into detail in the manager training toolkit, but these are some predictors of turnover. So the immediate manager, a poor fit to the job, co-workers not committed to quality, pay and benefits, and a connection to the organization or leadership. Just consider these things, and this is from Gallup. Again, tons of surveys and research was conducted to say these are ways that you can predict if your team members are going to leave. So we want to reduce that by recruiting and hiring from the best fit for the best fit. What can we do on the front end to make sure that this person is a good fit for our team? Conducting manager training like this, using the manager training toolkit to make sure that you're learning and growing as well so you can lead your team member. Competitive wages, focusing on all the drivers that we've talked about that impact engagement, and again, those coaching strategies. These are a few ways that we can keep turnover down. This quote right here: train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. If you can, put in the chat, agree or disagree with this quote. Train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. We want you to be excellent. We want you to be a peak performer. And I don't want you to want to leave. I want to treat you so good that even in your excellence, you'll stay here and share it with the organization. So for the last portion, we're going to go into recognizing and reducing burnout. And I know this is the topic that you've heard about, you talk about, you read and you study day in and day out because it's so prevalent in healthcare. But I do want to define it. It's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive or prolonged stress. That means it's been happening over time and then you burn out. So what does it look like? You're feeling tired. And as you're going through these, as we go through these, this is for your team members and this is also for you. Because one thing is for certain, you can't give what you don't have. If you don't have the energy and the motivation, how can you give that to your team? So I want you to look at it through your lens and also looking at it as you look at your team members moving forward, as you engage with them. Are they looking tired? Are they constantly complaining that they're tired? Complaints of headaches and body aches and things of that nature. Are they leaving work more often? Are they calling out for sick days or leaving early? Decreased motivation. This is a telltale sign, especially if you have a high energy staff person and then all of a sudden they're just meeting requirements or checking the box. Cynical and negative attitude, the naysayer, and they weren't that before. And now it's just, oh, this won't work, this won't get approved, whatever the case may be. They may not be a negative person, they may just be burnt out. Detachment from work and the team, feeling, they seem isolated. They all used to go to lunch together or frequent the same area, and now they're a bit removed. Decreased productivity. You as a leader will definitely be able to tell that very early on. And they're procrastinating. They're taking longer than what they used to with tasks that they used to accomplish. You know your team. You know what they're capable of doing. If all of a sudden there is a drastic decrease, maybe that person is becoming burnt out or is burnt out. And the last thing is outbursts. This may not happen often in the workplace because we are professionals, but it can happen. Think about a pot of water, it boils, and then essentially it blows up, right? That's how humans work. It's imploding. We can explode on the inside and then we explode on the outside because we're so frustrated. So these are ways that you can recognize if you or your team is burnt out. And then we want to know, what can we do about it? What solutions are there for reducing burnout? Again, flexible scheduling. This is going to be across all literatures that talk about burnout, because sometimes we all just need to disconnect, get away from the workplace and just exhale outside of it. Again, when able, if it's possible. Encouraging and supporting that work-life balance. That is saying taking your vacation days. And if your team member says, oh, I need to take a week, not making them feel bad for being off, because again, that could have been a mental health week. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I want to celebrate the whatever. They could have just needed a week for their mindset. EHR technology optimization, minimize the clicks. In the manager training toolkit, there's a link to the article Death by 1,000 Clicks. And we know, I think it was Beckford that wrote it, and it's the EHR. Can we create templates to minimize the clicks? If there are certain procedures that you know are consistent, how can you get your EHR provider, your vendor, to simplify the process so it's not as stressful? And using technology in other ways to minimize some of the stress and overwhelm. Providing clear expectations for all your employees. People want to know, what is it that you expect of them? No gray areas, be very specific. When you're setting those goals, set SMART goals so they can know what you expect. So now there's a neutral conversation. They know what you want and they know what they have to do to achieve it. And ensuring your employees have access to the necessary tools and resources. If you give someone a job to do, make sure they have everything that they need to do it. And that's not just technology, it's the education, the teamwork. Do they need to develop a small group of people to make it happen? So when you look at, there's a project or we need to get this done, you know the outcome, and then dissect it to see what all does my team member need to make this happen. So they don't get stressed out trying to make it happen in the absence of a collaborative effort. And providing ongoing training. Again, we want to always do things as safely as we can and with a high level of quality, but there are sometimes ways that you can do things better and faster and more efficient. So ongoing training is a way to foster that. Again, maybe we can lean out the operation. Maybe we can digitize some of the processes. So these are ways that we can reduce burnout. And with burnout, I want you to remember that it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't look the same for everyone. Some people can continue to walk around with high energy, smiling, and be completely exhausted on the inside. There are several factors that lead to burnout. It may not just be one thing like the EHR. Reducing burnout requires change, and we know how much we love change in the workplace, but we may need to look at changing our workflow, changing our system, changing the layout of our facility so we can minimize some of the burnout. And it can happen to all staff. Early on, conversations about burnout were specific to provider burnout. I think some of that is dissolving now because anyone can get burnt out in an organization. And I also encourage you to utilize the STAR 2 Center's burnout assessment tool to measure your need for intervention and prevent burnout. The link is here. It's also in the manager training toolkit. If you go to the chcworkforce.org, you'll be able to access it and just see where you are now in your organization. So with all that being said, the Manager Training Toolkit is coming. You will have access to it to the Star 2 Center's on their website. You'll be able to download it and use it. Again, there's a training plan in the back of it, so you can sit down with your supervisor and go through a comprehensive list and create a comprehensive list, rather, of what training you need as a manager so you can lead your team, so you can keep your team engaged, and more than anything, ensure that they're satisfied so they stay with you. We want to retain good people, and the more equipped you are as a manager, the easier it'll be for you to do just that. So with that, thank you so much for your time and your attention. For those of you that joined last weekend today, thank you for giving us 2 days of your busy workday. There's my contact information, april@aprillewis.com. If there's anything that I can do to support you, support your organization, or support your team, please let me know. And again, I wish you all good health and peace and positive days ahead. So with that, I will hand it back over to Suzanne and the team to take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, April, for that engaging presentation on employee engagement. I know, again, I always learn something when I hear from April, and I know you guys did as well. As we are wrapping up here, we are going to put the session evaluation on the screen. And before you log out, if you wouldn't mind just filling that out so we can hear your feedback, see what you thought, and let us know how we can improve next time. And I know April would appreciate your feedback as well. So we're going to leave the line open for about another minute or so, even though we are at the top of the hour, so you guys can fill that out as you're walking out of the room here. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And again, to April for leading us into engaging presentations back to back.